Hello and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Kay, and I'm joined by producer Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Here in the Providence College Podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Fryer family. This week, we have the pleasure of speaking with Katie Wood, a member of the class of 2004. Wood was an elementary and special education major at Providence and spent a decade as a special education teacher. In the spring, she published A Simple Seed of Growth, Gratitude, and Giggles, a journal for kids. Since then, more than 6,000 children have started their days with these lessons, including students in schools across the country. Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is such an honor.
So tell us the story of A Simple Seed. How was it born?
So this journal was born during COVID. I was a former teacher, and for several years when I was teaching, I always wondered why we're not focusing more on mental health, growth mindset, social emotional learning. And when COVID hit and I found myself homeschooling 4 kids, that was my time to pour into my kids and invest into their minds. And it was on me now to walk the walk and give them this growth mindset, this attitude of I can figure things out. And it started when I had a morning routine. My second daughter came down and asked if she could learn how to have special mornings as well. And that's when I started writing. And the journal consists of life lessons, gratitude, I am statements, all things that really help kids pay attention to what goes on in their head. And that all happened throughout COVID years. And once I started to share that, that's when I knew I had a huge amount of emails in my inbox. And that's when I knew if our family needed this, other families need it too. And that's why I published it.
Can you share some examples, some of the activities in the book? You mentioned I am statements. What are some of the I am statements?
So yes. So every lesson starts with a life lesson. So the journal is intended to just take 5 minutes to start your day right, because how you start your morning really sets the tone for the entire day. So it was a little life lesson from how to be, respectful, kind, making the right decision, knowing when to be rude, holding the door for the person behind you, why failure is really life's greatest lesson. All these life lessons. So they're very short and sweet. And then there's a box for gratitude where each kid has to come up with 3 things they're grateful for, and they need to be different every single day. Helping kids realize that it's the little things in life that we probably don't pay attention to that we need to start becoming more aware of and how grateful we are. It's that enough mentality. And then the I am statements is just a box for kids to reflect on the voice in their head. So I am strong, I am kind, I am brave, I am worthy. Really paying attention to the voice in your head, because what follows your I ams really comes back and follows you. So just bringing awareness, because most of what we do is completely subconscious. Most kids aren't even aware of the voice in their head. And when they start writing it down and paying attention, that's like anything in life. You learn a new word, you start seeing it everywhere. You start paying attention to the voice in your head, and that single exercise of writing it down helps program in their brain their thoughts about themselves. Then there's a daily challenge and a giggle, because starting your day with a laugh is such a powerful thing. And then lastly is who can I make smile today? And that's a chance for kids to be more intentional, to start their day, walk into the school with someone in mind of a day that they're going to make better. And that's how kids become, start that ripple effect of making others feel good. And the last little section is a chance for parents to connect. There's a question that parents get to share an experience from their life and have deeper conversations, more meaningful conversations with their kids.
And since you've been published, it's been embraced by schools. Tell us how it's spread.
So this journal has really spread by word of mouth or social media. We did have a clip on NBC News that helped bring awareness to the power of starting your morning right. And so we have had a bunch of schools reach out, and this book has entered several schools in Massachusetts. We had a company called AM Cards sponsor a book for every child in Uvalde in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So they get to start their day, which I can't think of a district who deserves it more, really with something positive and enlightening. And we've spread across all the United States in schools where there's more of a focus on social emotional learning now, because, it's easy to say these days, mental health is very real. Kids are more stressed and anxious than ever. And I think schools are really starting to take notice that if their mind's not in the right place, they can't learn as effectively. And when you do master social emotional learning and mindset and being more mindful, it actually improves your cognitive function. So just to spend a few minutes each day centering your brain and getting it really in the right place helps their day and helps them actually learn more and more effectively.
Do you feel that the time of day is really key? Like, is it important to start this way in the morning?
So at the end of the day, I think parents are just very busy today's day and age. I think a lot of us are staying afloat. I think we want to pour into our kids. We want to invest in them. We want to make them the best version of them. I mean, at the end of the day, that is the most important role we'll ever have in this, journey in life. But I don't think we know where to begin. And that this journal takes that away, the thought process. It is a roadmap for families and kids of teaching all these life lessons that usually are taught in hindsight. They're usually taught after something happens. And the whole goal is to give these tools so they are prepared for whatever life's going to throw at them, because we all know life's going to throw hard things. The reason it's done in the morning and the most effective in the morning is because when you wake up, your brain is in a state, it's called a theta state, that is most receptive. So how you start your day, and most of us will turn on the news and maybe pour a cup of coffee without water, and we're kind of doing these automatic bad habits that are affecting our mind without us even realizing. And our day really is, the tone of our day is set in the morning. So if you can do it in the morning, that is ideal. Before my kids walk into school, they have these thoughts about themselves and these challenges. So they're being intentional, which I think gives them an advantage for the day. If you cannot do the morning, absolutely do it at night, because it's better than nothing. It's great for dinner topics and conversations, but the start of the day is intentional, because that is when your brain is the most receptive, and how you start your day is how your day will flow.
How did you develop your own mindfulness practice? Like, how did you get these routines yourself?
So, about 6 years ago now, our third daughter, she had a lot of medical issues. So she was a Boston Children's kid. And I felt during that time, that was probably one of the hardest times of our life for my husband and I felt my brain was spiraling. I feel like I was losing control of my mind. I was going to places I shouldn't. I was really having a hard time mentally. And that's when I started digging deep. That's when I started my morning routine. I got up before the kids. It was like the calm before the chaos. We have 4 small kids. It's crazy. And if I don't center myself first, then I noticed that energy, that bad energy, if I didn't take care of myself, would bleed onto my kids. And once I started really taking care of myself first in the morning and setting the tone, and I'd read something positive. I did some prayer. I did some mindfulness. I wrote down what I was grateful for. I really got my day in order. And that is when, number one, I saw my mind starting to calm down, to get more in control. And I was more intentional and more aware of the voice in my head. And I was also noting a whole different tone in the whole house. My kids were happier. When parents are stressed, kids are stressed. I don't know if we realize how important it is. Our role is to be in control of our energy and set the tone of the day, because it 100% affects our kids without us even knowing, because energy is invisible, but energy is very real. So once I learned 6 years ago, wow, I can take control of my mind in one of the darkest, hardest times in my life. And I know I saw such a difference, and I knew what a gift it was. That's when I couldn't stop, because I feel like I owed it to my kids. And that's when I also realized I could give them this gift, and you can learn this at a young age. My gosh, I feel you can conquer the world if you know how to control your mind.
So I'm certain that you have encountered, as you've been testing the journal, some children, maybe even some educators and parents who have been a little skeptical about whether this would work for their families. How have you gotten them to embrace these habits?
At the end of the day, my job is not to make other parents do things they don't want to. I think it's very hard to argue that the mental state of kids is at a all-time low. I mean, I think we all can see that stress and anxiety. If if this tool doesn't work for your family, if life lessons and gratitude and paying attention to their self-talk, if that doesn't work for your family, then that's on you. That's kind of what I say. I created this journal for my family at the end of the day. These are my husband and I are, God forbid something happens to us tomorrow, they always have this journal. They have us. It's kind of our little legacy, our gift to them. And if other kids can benefit from it, that's all I care about. I think that is such a beautiful thing. But at the end of the day, you know, parents, they're in control of their own family, and whatever they value as important, that's on them. So I think there's not something for every family in the world. I think you have to do what you think is best. But I will tell you, we did a study for 2 years of a focus group, and 97% of people in the focus group said that this completely changed the tone of their family. And with those stats and that kind of data, I think this book does work. I think at the end of the day, you have to work. And I think that goes for anything in life.
So you were an education major at PC, elementary and special ed. What were some of the courses experiences that you had as a student that you felt helped you with your path, your career path afterward?
Yeah, so I actually look back at Providence as a key time in my life where I started to believe in myself. And I'll share a quick little story, but I was a walk-on for the women's basketball team. So I was playing pickup with the boys one day in the gym, and I did not believe I was worthy of a spot for Division I Big East basketball. I was recruited to some D3 schools. Something in my heart and my gut told me to go to Providence. That's another big lesson from the journal, is always follow your heart and your gut. I did that. And it has served me very well for meeting the best friends in the world and my husband. But when I was on that court, the men's basketball coach came over to me and said, you should try out for the women's team. And immediately negativity filled my head. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm bleh, all the I'm nots, which is what, as humans, it's usually what we do. That's our first inclination. And he came back and the next day and said it again. And at that point, I'm like, all right, well, what do I have to lose? And so I met the women's coach. I showed up. I worked and hustled harder than I have ever in my life. I always knew, you know, if I wasn't the most talented out there, you better believe my attitude and my effort are going to make up for that lack of talent. And I worked so hard that I got a spot on that team. For 2 years, I played a total of 24 minutes my freshman and sophomore year, but I didn't quit. And I'm a very big believer on, if you just keep going, if you work hard enough and you don't quit, there's always going to be some reward at the end. But most of us fall short because we just can't hold on any longer. And I did not quit. And I got an opportunity at the end of my sophomore year to go into a game and worked my hardest and helped the team completely turn around the game. And at the end of that game, our coach granted me a full scholarship, and I was named captain my junior and senior years. And that experience lit a fire in me. And that experience showed me I can do hard things. And that experience gave me a burst of confidence and knowledge that I didn't even know about myself. And every time to this day where I struggle or I want to quit, because I wanted to throw this book in the fire pit many times. It is a very, very difficult task to write and publish a book. But I had that little voice back in my head of my coach telling me I can do hard things, believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. And I have always held on to that, and I'm forever grateful for that experience, that I never quit and I sought it through. And remember that there are rewards at the end of hard work. You just have to keep going. And I sent a copy to my coach and said, this really started with you. You planted a seed in me and gave me those roots to always stay strong and know I can do hard things. And I thank Providence for that experience.
What brought you to Providence in the first place? You said your gut was telling you that Providence was, that you needed to be in Friartown. How did you know?
The same reason that I knew writing this book was the right reason. There's a feeling that just can't be explained. It's a gut feeling. I remember my guidance counselor saying, why don't you apply to Providence College? And something inside me was like, yes, why don't I? Like, yes. And, you know, when my kids can't make decisions, we do something called the coin flip feeling. And I'll tell them, you know, heads this decision, tails this decision. we'll flip that coin halfway through. I'll stop it and I won't even show them if it's heads or tails. I'll ask them at that moment, what do you hope it is? And we always hope it's something, which is, that is your gut. That is, your soul telling you there's this, we are all on this path with these feelings of finding out what our purpose is and so forth. And whatever that feeling is, that is your answer. Doesn't matter if it's heads or tails. It's what you hoped. And that is your answer. And that was one of the ways that I chose Providence College. Something inside me was pushing me to go there, even when I knew nothing about it.
So where did you grow up? So you were not familiar with Providence College before you applied?
I grew up in Connecticut, so I was familiar with it. I didn't know enough I never had my heart set on one. I didn't grow up being like, I am going to go to this school. I always had an open mind and an open heart. But when I heard Providence College, something went through me. And for the right reason, because it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
And so you didn't visit, it's not like you did the whole college tour thing, you just knew.
I just knew.
Katie, where can people find the book if they want to try this with their own families?
Thank you. So it's on Amazon. And for people that are interested in bulk items or schools, so we are writing a school edition that will be secular. That is coming out in about 1 month. You can email us at simpleseedjournal@gmail.com. And we're coming out with a third journal. It's a mindset for athletes, and it will be middle school and high school, geared towards that age level, for teams, about really teaching the power of the mind in sports. My husband played hockey at Providence. I have my story as a walk-on. We both can 100% say everything is between the head. A huge part of sports is what's in your mind. And the younger you teach kids to take control of your mind and the power of body posture and being a good teammate and getting up after you fall down, the bigger advantage you have. And that's a journal my sister and I are co-writing that should be done by next spring.
Is she an athlete as well?
She is an athlete as well, and she's a certified mindset coach.
It's so interesting because I feel like we hear a lot about sports psychology. But it sounds like you and your husband developed these skills before that was really a thing.
Yeah. It's just showing the power of it. I mean, it's very difficult to play any division sport in the college level. I mean, it's very hard to play at that level. And when you do, a huge part of it is the conversation between your ears. There's a huge mental piece that either will make or break you. And today, unfortunately, the average kid is quitting sports by age 13. There's a ridiculous amount of pressure on them. I think the sports world is falling a little bit out of control. And I think parents especially need to help guide their kid a little bit more. And I think teaching at that middle school, high school level of the power of your mind and how you can make it work for you and not against you will take you very far in the sports world, but more importantly in life.
Can you tell us a little bit about your kids? You've got 4. How old are all of them?
Yeah. So I have a 10-year-old. I have 3 daughters and a little boy, a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And my husband, Steve, is now a firefighter. So we've both learned to follow our dreams, and it's so important for us to walk the walk and follow your purpose and passion, because at the end of the day, more is caught than taught, and our kids are watching us. And if we want them to follow their passion and their goals and their dreams and, fulfill your purpose of why you're here on this planet, you better believe we will do it. Because I think at the end of the day, parents are, we are the most important teachers to our kids. And
you've gotten to share your project, not just within the United States, but there are other places as well. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. So we took a trip to Anguilla, my husband and I, in the spring, and we met with the director of education and we visited a school while we were down there. And it was beautiful because as we walked into that school, written all over the building was clips from my book. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at this school. It was, I am worthy, I am strong, and, I can do hard things, and all these positive messages. And we walked in, we met the principal, we met a few students, and we are still in the works because it's easier said than done to get books to Anguilla. It's not, it's a process. And we are in the process of getting a grant because we have some companies who have sponsored us to help give books to each one of those kiddos in the school that we visited.
How did you make that connection? How did you was it just part of a vacation and you said, I'm going to stop into a school?
It was part of a vacation, but so I always have the journal with me, and we met a little boy, Jarik, while we were on an excursion, and he really hit it off with my husband. The two of them were like playing in the water, like just this kid was the cutest kid ever. And he told us where he went to school, and we had told him about our journal because he asked what we did, and he's like, that sounds like the coolest thing. And that's when we were like, how awesome would it be in your school? So we made a quick call. We went to visit. We gave Jarik a copy of the book. And that, we can thank that little boy for, again, life is always speaking to you. You just have to open your eyes and follow the clues. He led us to that school.
It's amazing. So when I think I've seen references to this, like in the, some local news stories about your work and things. And I presumed you meant adults, but I can't believe that, it was a student who paved the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a big thing that I teach my kids all the time too. Just open your eyes. Life is constantly speaking to you. The universe has this way of, you put your dreams and your goals out. If it's one thing to do that, but then you got to walk the walk and work and take a ton of action. And if the universe sees, wow, these are your goals and you're working hard towards it, we're going to open doors for you. And that's how I've taught them to there's something so much bigger than us. And you can really have whatever you want. You just have to be open to it and work really hard, not be afraid of hard work and sacrifices to get really what you want and live a very meaningful life.
So just to review, you have two versions of the book now, and then you're working on this athlete's version. So one is a secular version for schools, and the original is not?
The original has some mention of keeping God in your heart, reminding kids that, you were born for a reason. You are the way you are for a reason, and you're never alone. And that's how God is mentioned in this journal, just to keep, God in your heart.
Can you tell us a little bit about your faith? Has that been an important part of your life?
It has. So faith has always been a part of my life. It got incredibly strong again when our daughter went through that really difficult time. And that's when I leaned on my faith. I think at the end of the day, we all need some kind of anchor in life, because life is going to throw you storms and big waves and going to knock you down. And if you're not anchored in something, you're going to get knocked down. And for me, my anchor is my faith. And that's that one thing that I can go to when I'm struggling, when I'm in a hard time, when I don't know where to go. I go to my faith, and without fail, it pulls me out every time. That's my anchor. It might not be someone else's anchor, but that's really, that's gotten me very far by leaning on that. And I think it humbles you to know we are pretty small in this big world. And a reminder, my faith always reminds me we are here for a reason. Our job is to figure out why, and then use those gifts to serve the world and serve others.
And so I'm just curious, if you think back on your experience at Providence College, is this kind of the path you expected to go? Were you always a writer? Were you always?
No, I wasn't. I was not. So my path was to be a teacher. And, I think you know what you know. You're young when you're in college. You're figuring it out. And I loved teaching. I did. I taught in the South Bronx. I taught in New York City. I taught, in Jamaica Plains outside of Boston. And I ended up in Westwood. And I had a great teaching career. However, when I started to grow a family and we had 4 kids, teaching just wasn't the right place for me anymore at that part in my life. And so it takes courage to make a change. I think it's very hard to do because you work so hard for that career. But when life changes, I felt unaligned. I wanted to be at home. I knew this was a short time in life of having young kids. I really wanted to be there as much as possible. And that's when I made that change, and to find a way to work around my kids so I could put them first and work second, which is a difficult thing to do, but worth it.
Well, I think we'll all be excited to see this next project for middle and high school students and see how it helps students there.
Thank you.
Well, Katie, thank you. It's been so wonderful chatting with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Subscribe to the Providence College podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify, as well as your smart speaker. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.